Hello. This lecture will focus on creation theology in the book of Job. And the purpose of this is just to introduce you to an aspect of the book of Job that is typically not emphasized, especially in the churches of Christ, where theology is not in our DNA. And I also wanted to show you another way of looking at Job so that you can have different ways of understanding Job after this class. I want to say that my thinking on creation theology is based on the work of Terry Firstime. And if you want more information about what I'm presenting, the book I recommend is called Creation Untamed, the Bible, God, and Natural Disasters by Terrence E. Firstime. And there's one chapter on Job. Firstime came to Harding University, it must have been 10 years ago now. And he gave a series of lectures at the downtown Church of Christ, and very, very well received. And it opened my eyes to the fact of the importance of theology as a way to help us to think more about God. And then as we think more about God, think about how that can enhance our relationship with God, with each other, and a better understanding of life. For the book of Job, to understand creation theology, I would like to focus at the end of the book, starting in chapter 38. And what I want to do is focus on when God appeared to Job. And if you remember, God appears to Job in a whirlwind. And then God finally speaks. But when God speaks to Job, God presents Job with an object lesson of creation. So the last several chapters of when God speaks is all about creation. And so by looking at these chapters very carefully, we can understand more about a theology of creation. And what we mean by that is, what is creation as God intended, and what does it tell us about God and about God's relationship with us? But when we look at creation theology in Job, we actually get an insight into suffering. And I think this tends to get missed because the dialogue of Job, the thinking of Job himself, all has to do with human righteousness and human sin and how that affects suffering. And our thinking is more one-dimensional. And so what we tend to do is every time we suffer, every time something bad happens, we automatically filter it through a framework of sin and righteousness. What did I do to deserve this? Why, God, does this happen? And it's almost automatic that anytime religion is brought into suffering, it's always centered around how could God let this happen? And I think the reason why there is not a real good answer to that is that we have not really paid attention carefully to what God has to say about creation. And in the book of Job, God revealed how creation worked in such a way that there is a dimension of suffering that is part of how the world works that has absolutely nothing to do with sin or with righteousness. And surprisingly, it's what God tells Job, it has nothing to do with you or humanity whatsoever. So when God gives Job this tour of the cosmology of creation, the point God wants to make, and the double point that I want to put out there for you. But I think the first point is to tell Job, it's not about you. You think it's all about you, what I've done wrong. I'm innocent. I'm calling God to trial. And then God tells Job, look at the whole cosmos. does any of it depend on you, Job? And Job answer is obviously no to all the theories of rhetorical question God asked Job. You could be God for a day. What can you do with the weather? You know, with all the stuff that's going on in the universe and with all the wild animals. So I think the purpose of creation theology, what God wants to tell Job, is to decenter Job. Okay, and this is kind of bringing a dialogue to Genesis, because remember in Genesis, and it's reaffirmed in Psalm 8, that humanity has a central role in creation. Now, without denying that humanity is special to God and humanity is in the image of God, God tells Job, just a look at creation shows that in the overall scheme of things, how creation works, humanity is just a speck. The world will function as the world is designed to function regardless of humanity. And what we know about science actually bears it out. The universe is vast, existed for a long time, and we only occupy a corner. So that's the first thing to understand with creation theology is it's decentering. And if we're like Job and we find ourselves maybe too obsessed with how things are happening to me, why bad things are happening to me, we're looking at the cosmos decenters us. And it makes us realize what God's telling Job, not everything's about you. As a matter of fact, just about everything happened. It's not about you. Okay, so if it's not about you, then what can we learn about creation? And I want to focus on the second part of God's speech from this tornado, and it's on the animals. And so this is towards the end of Job chapter 38, and then all of 39 and all of 40. You could picture this as a safari. I don't know if any of you have been on a safari. The closest I've been on a safari is in San Diego, where outside of San Diego, there is a wildlife park and safari, and it's just a massive, space out in nature for all kinds of animals, and all of these animals just coexist naturally without, cages, fences, or barriers, and it's a safari park, and you can get on a tram like we did and just go into the domain of the animals. That had what's called a roar and snore safari experience, where you can stay the night, and then when you go to sleep, you're sleeping with the lions that are around you, and you can hear the lion roar at night. And that experience gives you something that you normally don't experience at the zoo, in that the lion is more active at nighttime. So you can stay at night, hear the lions roar, and be active while I guess you try to snore during the night. But the point of the safari is this: you are on the animal's turf. You, as a human, Job, you are out of your domain, and you are in the animal domain. So if you notice, all the animals that God presents to Job, it's almost like a parallel to the animals God brings to Adam in Genesis 1, but it's reversed, where all the animals come to Adam, and then Adam names the animals. The picture we get is more of a domesticated animal that approaches Adam the center. Job is reverse. The animals are wild, and they all have a different places in creation, like the hawk, raven in the air, the ostrich out in the desert, the lion. And so God takes Job on a safari. Job is shown all the different wild animals, and that is the counterpoint to Genesis 1, where God tells Job there's a whole world out there. and it is wild. It is natural because I made it this way. Not about sin, it's about the way God designed the world. And what God is showing Job is all these animals, God had given freedom to be who they are, just as God has given Job freedom to be what Job wants to be. So we focus so much on human freedom, that God has given humanity a choice to choose good, to choose evil, and God allows that to happen. God is telling Job, hold on, I'm going to decenter you. Let's just look at creation without humanity, and I'm going to show you that everything in creation, including the wild animals, including natural phenomenon, are all given their own free will. They are allowed to be and to exist and to behave and to interact in an ecosystem that is not micromanaged by God. And that includes behavior that can be violent, that can lead to suffering. So, for example, the ostrich, if you look at the ostrich, there's a cruelty there because the ostrich can be cruel to their young. They may neglect taking care of their eggs and their young so that it is trampled by others. And so God is telling Job there's a cruelty, there's a wildness that I have designed into creation, and I'm not micromanaging this. I'm allowing it to be. Though with its creation, it's good and wild. Okay, being good does not mean risk-free. It does not mean you can't get hurt, because creation, it had an element of danger. It had an element of risk, because that's just how the world works. That's how God designed the world. So consider gravity, for example. And you say gravity is useful by keeping things in its place, but gravity can kill, it can maim, it can harm you. And whose fault is it? Why has it happened to someone if they slip and they fall off a cliff, or a rock falls down a mountain and hits someone, or a tree falls and kills someone? Like God is telling Job here, the world I created is not a risk-free world. Now, things will happen, and it can be harmful. It can lead to suffering, but there's no more evil to it. And so to describe that aspect of creation where a harm can happen, a violence can happen, but it's not from a moral evil, it's just how creation works. Often the terminology that scholars would use is not evil or wrong. They may say something like a non-good. It's not good, but it's not evil either. I mean, nobody wants to get hurt, but being hurt is just part of how the world works. But this is emphasized in the final animal that God describes in Job chapter 40. You look at Job chapter 40, the entire chapter is devoted to one animal. This is the only time that an animal is given an entire chapter. And it's kind of surprising because this animal is described as like a monster. So in our time, this would be like a dragon, King Kong, or Godzilla. There are some elements that seem to be familiar, but as you read through, you read that the animals have scales, it sneezes fire, and it's just so terrifying that even the gods are afraid of this animal. And this animal is the Leviathan. So imagine a dragon like Smog in Lord of the Rings, for example. So imagine just a powerful fire-breathing dragon. And what God did is, even those kind of creatures I created. Okay, and these kind of creatures, you cannot control. If you try to approach that creature, it's not going to go well for you. And there's a little bit of humor in the description of the Leviathan, the dragon. And if you look at this is Job chapter 41, and then verse 5, it's just a rhetorical question. Would you go to the dragon and play with it as a bird? Will you put it on a leash for your kid to play with? Now just put your hand on it. So if you approach a dragon and just say, hey, kitty, 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 try to put a leash on it, you try to domesticate this dragon. In verse 8, it says, think of how the dragon would react. Think of the battle of this dragon. If you do something like this, it says, you will not do this again. And it's pretty clear. God created even the Leviathan as a wild, dangerous creature that terrifies the God, that if you just walk up and try to pet it or domesticate it, that's the last thing you will ever do in life. And so God said, Job, this is how the world works. And so what I want to emphasize in creation theology is that this provides a context for why some sufferings occur. And that is an answer to Job, the dialogue of Job, those friends of why suffering happened. So it is really inaccurate to say that God does not answer Job at all. To be sure, God does not answer Job on Job's terms. Job wants a trial. He wants God called and to be charged with being guilty and causing a righteous person to suffer. God does not play by those rules. And God makes it very clear to Job when God appears in the whirlwind. Just like us throwing wind into a tornado, God said, Job, no, you have no ability or standing to call me into account. Nevertheless, let me give you a tour of how the world works. And here's the safari, and this is a world that's good, but wild, people get hurt. And that is in answer, because if you note carefully, a lot of what happened to Job to cause Job's suffering is natural disasters, including a tornado. So God appeared in the very medium, the wind, the whirlwind, that was part of the reason why Job suffered. So for creation theology today, what does that mean? It means that in the world today, God did not create a risk-free world. We can get hurt. There is danger, and that danger occurs because God allows creation to be what God wants it to be, good and wild. And so this would answer a lot of questions we might have. Why did this happen? With gravity, if you slip and fall, you get hurt. A rock falls, that happens. It stinks, but that's just how the world is. It's not a risk-free world. I mean, we would like to know why God created a world with risk, but that's not what God did. God just said, this is how I created it. We can only speculate. Maybe God wants a world that's dynamic, a world that had vitality. If everything was super safe, maybe it would be a drab, boring, we don't know. But then when we have that view of creation theology of this is how the world works, boy, as humans, we need a lot of humility knowing we're just a small piece of the overall grand cosmos, that it's far beyond our imagination. It doesn't center around us. It does explain a lot of what we might experience in life. I want to show you one example of that in a news report. that I have read. So I'm going to switch to my iPad here. Okay. Now, if you look here, this is an article from the USA Today. I just happened to see it, a few years ago. The headline was really interesting. Man tried to take photo of beaver. It killed him. And so if you look at it, it says the fisherman was bitten to death by a beaver. All he was doing was trying to take its picture. The man spotted the beaver while fishing, but as he approached to take the photograph, the beaver bit him on the thigh. The animal managed to sever an artery, and his friend couldn't stop the blood flow. Okay, now, creation is noted with how the beaver functions in creation. There and it says, beavers have sharp teeth. Okay, and because of the sharp teeth, beavers bite through trees. Right there. And so that's the question. What did this man do to deserve being killed by a beaver? Where is God in all this? And this is where the creation theology of Job will help us. This man did absolutely nothing wrong in terms of a sin. Okay, God did not will that beavers kill humanity. Rather, God created a world, and God gave beavers freedom to do what beavers do. And the same freedom God gives humans to do what humans do. And of course, this beaver has the apparatus necessary to bite through trees. So obviously, human flesh is less hardy than trees. So if a beaver is going to bite a human, it's going to really hurt the human, even if the beaver is not trying to be mean or anything. So that's just how the world works. The world is wild. The world is not risk-free. And sometimes people get killed. Sometimes people, manage to escape not being killed. So in the end, we see a Komodo dragon right here. And it's just really interesting that a woman was bitten by a Komodo dragon. It sunk the teeth into the woman, but she was able to fend it off. So it's just a reminder this is how the world works. And so that's just my own thinking about creation theology that I want to provide you as a way of thinking of how nature works. And the Bible actually reflects this dimension more often than we think. For example, I think Ecclesiastes and Proverbs mention that, if there's a pit in the ground, someone can fall in it. Gravity, you can fall and get hurt, and that happens. So that's one aspect of creation theology. If you want to think about it more, I suggest getting this book by Button. Of course, you might ask, okay, then what role does sin play in creation? Because according to Job, things like earthquakes and fire, tornadoes, mudslides, this is just creation doing what it's designed to be doing. So why do earthquakes happen? Because tectonic plates do what tectonic plates do. Okay? If we want to have beauty in the world, like here in California, if we have mountains, well, guess what? You're going to have earthquakes because mountains result with the plate colliding and forcing uplift. That's going to create earthquakes. And then when you have mountains, you have problem of gravity with things falling, right? And so often it's in the most wild places with stunning natural beauty that's also some of the most dangerous places to live because that comes with the territory. God allows tectonic plates to do what they want to do. The wind's going to do what the wind's going to do. The rain's going to do what the rain's going to do. And the combination of all these forces create natural beauty that is amazing, like the Grand Canyon or Sierra Nevada mountains, and just about any place in the world that is comparable is also not without risk. Okay, well, I hope that helped you with the book of Job better. And if you want to understand creation theology outside of Job, like how does sin affect it, I suggest getting for time because he has a chapter on how sin affects the natural order, but that's a different topic for a different day from a different book. Finally, I want to mention if you want to continue your studies in the book of Job, probably the best resource I recommend, especially if you want to just work through Job for yourself, or if you're in ministry to understand how you might help people you're ministering to better. The absolute best commentary I found is by Sam Ballantyne on Job, and this is the Smith and Haraway commentary series. And what's really distinctive about this series is that they're intentional in using works of art, poetry, literature all throughout history to illustrate the impact of Job and all throughout history. So I know Sam, fairly well, and I've worked with Sam, and he spent at least a year on sabbatical, just traveling around the world, finding the impact of Job around the culture all over the world. A tremendous amount of work. It's all compiled here in this commentary. It also comes in a digital form as well that you can use images and text if you want to use it for presentation for sermons and classes. In addition to that, it's just an outstanding, careful study of the entire book of Job, section by section, in a very comprehensive and balanced manner. So, Book of Job by Sam Ballantyne is probably the one resource highly recommend the most. And if you want to understand theology better with creation, Terence Fruchtheim's the expert for that. Well, I hope that was helpful. And if you have questions or you want to talk more about it, I'm going to have a discussion open. And please do just share your discussion, questions, and thoughts, because having an engaging dialogue is really good for all of us to learn more about God and living as God's people.